Firstly, from me, a very warm welcome to this joint LGA and NALC Local Democracy in Action event. My name is Poonam Mistry. I work on the Be a Councillor campaign at the Local Government Association, and I will be chairing today's event, which actually coincides with European Local Democracy Week 2025, which has been going on for all of this week as well. I'm also joined on the call by Chris Borg and also Claire from NALC, and they'll be helping with the technical side of things on this call today. So if you have any issues, like I say, pop them in the chat and Chris or Claire will be able to help you out. We've also got some fantastic speakers joining us today to share their experiences, and I will introduce them very shortly. But before we do that, I just want to run through some quick housekeeping announcements, and they're kind of shown on the slide that you can see in front of you. So please take a moment to just have a look at those housekeeping announcements, and I will run through a few of them today. It's great to see that we've got people from across the country, and if you haven't already, please use the chat to keep introducing yourselves and let us know where you are. And you can also use the chat to interact with your fellow attendees, or also to share any links or useful information as we go through the call as well. In terms of questions for our speakers, please can you use the Q&A function, which is just a few buttons along from the chat function on the bottom of your screen, and we can make sure that we answer as many of those as we can during the Q&A session, which is towards the end of the event. We're recording this event and we will share this with you after the event has taken place, along with any other useful information or slides that are used. The closed caption feature and subtitles can be accessed by all attendees at any time during the event, and my colleagues Chris and Claire should be putting instructions for how to do that into the chat now. And we will also be asking for your feedback after the event, so please do look out for a feedback form towards the end of the event. Just give a moment for those instructions to go into the chat as well. So I think most people have joined the call now. I'd just like to set some ground rules for the session. So this is a safe space for people to come together to share and learn more about local government and what others are doing across the country. We will be demonstrating respect for each other's lived experience, and we'll be leaving any party politics at the door as well. So just want to get that clear for all attendees and speakers, and I'm sure that those rules will be followed as we run through the event. And just as it says on the screen in terms of housekeeping, attendees are automatically muted, so please do use the chat and the Q&A if you would like to raise any questions or points. I think that is all the housekeeping done for today. So I will briefly talk through the objectives of today's session, and hopefully we will kind of have a shared objective in this to find out more about what the speakers are doing on the call and what each other are doing in our respective areas across the country, and really get the most out of this time together. We've got an hour and 15, so we really want to make the most of that time on the call today. So as a reminder for maybe those who don't know, the overall aim of the Be a Councillor and also Make a Change programmes is to encourage more people from all backgrounds and all lived experiences to consider becoming local councillors. In this particular session, we're hoping to explore how different levels of local government can work together, to consider how local councils and county associations can help to encourage people to stand for election as councillors, and to understand the positive difference that new local councillors can make to council and county association areas. So I'd just like to invite each speaker to briefly introduce themselves, just a very quick one-line intro if you can, and we'll start with Andrew, as it says on the slide there.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Poonam. Yeah, my name's Andrew Moore-Browning. I'm the Clerk and RFO at Carnbury Parish Council in Cornwall.
Hi, I'm Melinda Wolfe from Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Association of Local Councils. I have been a councillor, chair of council and a clerk, and I'm now the chief officer at Bucks and MKALC.
Hi, Councillor Phil North. I'm the leader of Test Valley Borough Council. I've been the leader for the last 8 years and speaking today on our community council model.
Hi, I'm Emma Silverton. I'm the Democratic Services Manager with Councillor North at Test Valley Borough Council in Hampshire.
Thank you all. And I've already introduced myself, but I'm an advisor at the Local Government Association. So thank you to our speakers for giving up their time to join us today, as well as all of you as attendees. And we'll be hearing from them a little bit later in the session. So to kick us off, I'm going to talk briefly about the crucial role of councils, principal authorities and county associations and how they can help to encourage people to stand for election as councillors. We'll then hear from each of our speakers in turn in kind of an informal podcast style interview. So no slides to kind of come up there. And we'll be asking them some key questions before turning to a Q&A, and that is your chance to get your questions in to each of the speakers. So as they are speaking, feel free to pop any questions into the Q&A and we will pick them up towards the end of the sessions. And as I mentioned previously, if there's any issues or kind of questions in the meantime, Chris and Claire will be monitoring the chat for those. Great. So it's really important to start off with some context, I think, for this event and before we get into the stories of the speakers, and that is talking about the crucial role that local councils, principal authorities and county associations can play. And it's really important, I think, to see more diversity, more councillors from different backgrounds standing for elections, especially as we are fast approaching May 2026. And there's a few reasons, I think, why this is something that should be at the forefront of all of our minds as we start to think about those local elections next year. So there are obviously the different levels of local government, and each of them have a slightly different part to play. So I'll start with kind of running through each of those. I'm sure most of us on this call will be familiar, but just to make sure everyone is on that same baseline as we head into the speakers' kind of reflections as well. So firstly, town, parish and community councils, they are the level of local government that are closest to the electorate. Not everywhere is parished. There is a big also variation in the size and activities of councillors at this level, as I'm sure you'll be aware. And with the exception of a handful of parish councils and town councils, the role of parish councillor is voluntary. So with that in mind, it's really crucial that parish and town councils and county associations talent spot brilliant people that might be willing to step into this community champion role well in advance and kind of upstream of May 2026. The next tier from there is district councils, and it is sometimes said that it is kind of easier to secure candidates for election through the party political routes at district level. There is a lot of change in the political system at the moment and in the public's perception of politics at the moment. So local authorities really need to be proactive in publicising elections and encouraging people to understand the role of a local councillor and how they can make a difference in their communities, rather than possibly looking at national politics, but bringing it down to that local level. With those two in mind, it is important to remember that sometimes there is one unitary authority, and that will carry out all the functions of a district and county council. And oftentimes the unitary authority may be much more remote to the communities that it is serving. And again, it may feel that a disconnect is there between communities, councillors and the authority. So it is really important that we in local government are using all of our levers to encourage people to represent their communities on a unitary level, but also in the other levels as well. It's important to note as well that councillors can be at more than one level at once, called triple hatters, sitting on parish, district and county councils and carrying out different roles in each, which is always quite an amazing feat, I think, when they think about how many hours are in a day. So worth bearing that in mind, that triple hatters and double hatters do exist as well. There is more information on all of this on the gov.uk website, and if people would like to go more in depth into finding out about each level of local government, I'd encourage you to take a look at those websites and also the LGA website too. So with all of that context in mind and the importance of encouraging people to become councillors and consider participating in local democracy, there's quite a few things that we can do to encourage people to stand at these different levels. And this can vary, and the speakers on today's call will be able to offer some insight on what's worked well, what has worked well in terms of best practice, and what they would recommend possibly for others to follow suit in. But as a bit of an overview, parish and town councils up and down the country can hold information days, they can hold community events, promoting the work of not only the council, but also the role of the councillor, and encouraging people really to think about the role as a community champion as they consider their kind of election prospects. Local authorities and democratic services departments can also promote resources. So we have many resources on the LGA's Be a Councillor website. NALC, I know, have a lot of resources on their website too. Again, events are a really important way to promote standing as a councillor, and they can be done online, in person, many different formats and many different angles can be taken. But it's really important just to raise awareness with the public of what being a councillor entails and how people can get involved, as it is often not very well known unless people are already kind of within the local government sphere. And county associations, they can also organise kind of online or in-person events in advance of the next elections in their county area, working with local councils and once again explaining that role of a local councillor. And the key here is encouraging more residents to stand for election. And just to prove kind of how much we really need to emphasize the diversity of candidates that we're looking for here. A key stat for you all is that the Democracy Club think that around 35% of candidates standing in parish and town council elections in May 2025 were female. So 35% were female. If we just think about that in terms of diversity, whether that's gender diversity, but other forms as well, that's something we really want to make sure is becoming more equal over the coming years. So hopefully that's all been really helpful as context as we dive into the event. And I think what would be most helpful is to stop hearing from me and start hearing from our speakers who have real advice and experience to share with us today. So I'm going to not interview as such, but kind of ask some questions in a podcast style, and it'd be really great to hear your honest reflections today. So Mel, I'm going to start with you, and it would be great if you could tell us a bit about what a county association does and how you support councils in your area.
Thank you. So we have a number of key areas. Advice and guidance would seem to be obvious. It's a complex minefield that we swim in, and so tailored support on governance, finance, HR, legal matters, absolutely key. Training and development, training both our officers and our elected representatives. Again, some specialist courses, but also navigating things like neighbourhood planning, place shaping, the code of conduct. We all love code of conduct. Representation and advocacy for our town and parish councils, our members, and also some of the councils in the area who may not be members, but making sure that their voices are heard. We emphasise the importance of the influence that councils can have, but it's important that we carry it through and make sure it is heard. Collaborative and networking, working together as a team. We're aware that officers can experience social isolation in their roles, but so too can councillors, and we need them to talk together. And then innovation and improvement, looking across the country to see what's out there, what other councillors are doing, and bringing it back and then sizing it for small, medium, and our very large town councils in the area. I think ultimately, if you could encapsulate it in the word, it would be empowerment. We're looking to empower our local councils and the individuals that work within them.
Thank you. And I think empowerment is a great summary word there, but there is so much variety in everything you just mentioned. And it really seems that empowering people to be involved and be confident in what they're doing is really at the heart of that. So that is absolutely fantastic. And from your experience of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes elections in 2025. Would you mind sharing your reflections on how to encourage people to stand as local councillors, and especially reflecting on the BMKA LC toolkit would be really helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. We started thinking about the 2025 elections, which were taking place predominantly in the Buckinghamshire end of our county back in 2023. We reached out to Gloucestershire ALC and they provided us with their framework elections toolkit. Lorraine and I then worked on it to make it appropriate for Buckinghamshire and for Milton Keynes, involving our electoral officers and our monitoring officers as well, encapsulating all of the links from NALC, so that we could really bring together everything that somebody might need if they were considering standing in the 2025 elections. By having so many people involved in bringing together a comprehensive document, we brought everything into one place. We put it in front of the paywall so that anybody could see it regardless of membership for that period of time. And the feedback that we had from it was excellent. People, clerks and existing councillors said it made them more confident when talking to new prospective candidates because they could give them the link to the document or even print it out and give them the link so that they could see exactly what life was like as a town or parish councillor. The electoral services quite liked it because they also passed the link on if they received any direct inquiries, which was really good. In that toolkit, there were posters that people could use. We didn't quite get round to finishing the videos that we wanted to include as well. So that will be an innovation that we'll put in place for the 2026 elections, some of which are taking place in MKC next year. But doing things like putting in the electoral timetable, when do the nominees have to be in, and at the end of the day, when do the expenses have to be put in, but actually making sure that we key marked all of those particular things. One of a reflection after that was that people felt that perhaps the word parish puts people off standing forward. There's still very much an understanding that parish doesn't mean civil parish. And so what we're starting now in time for next year is the ease with which a parish council can rename itself, if it's minded to do so, as a community council. And actually that the power of the word community might be more engaging and more enticing to have people joining us rather than parish.
Thank you so much. And that there's a really interesting and helpful reflections. I think it seems a lot of collaboration has taken place there, and what a shame you couldn't get the videos in, but I'm sure there'll be a great addition to the next edition of this toolkit. And I think I've already seen in the chat people asking if it's possible to share that. And I think it'd be such a useful resource for people to draw inspiration from, as it seems you did from Gloucestershire too, which is a great example of working together. And just on your point there about the word parish, I think that's really, really fascinating. I'd be interested to know if others in the chat have faced similar barriers or kind of struggles with using that word. And do you think that it will become more common, Mel, for other parish councils to start considering community instead?
Yeah, I think they will. I think that a community council implies that someone comes from the community that they represent. A community council implies it's for that group of people, all those people that live within that community. I think it describes the remit quite well as also, whereas parish, is that my church, is obviously the most common misconception. So I think community just feels more engaging. It's a more engaging term.
I think, yeah, that's definitely, it seems very sensible to me. And I think others are agreeing in the chat that parish is a word that's maybe had some confusion in the past. So remains to be seen, but that is really fascinating. Thank you for those reflections. The next question from me is kind of what support is available for town, parish and community councillors once they've kind of done the elections, they're already elected. What support can you offer them?
We offer a lot of support, and particularly training. I think providing that training element, making sure that people who are going to be on the finance course have seen some finance for councillor training, and making sure that now that they are employers, which of course we didn't put on the posters, that they receive appropriate HR training and support. So we have a number of membership support partners in place so that as these specialist questions come in, we can, together with their clerks, provide them with the correct support. We absolutely encourage questions. We absolutely encourage people to come to us and say, we're thinking of this. Do you have any examples? One of the most common questions I get through my inbox is, Mel, find me a power. We'd like to do this, find me a power, which is really encouraging because that means our councils are actually doing something and something that they haven't done before. So that's really, really, really brilliant. We try and get together. We have, so we had Super Saturdays after the election this year where we got new councillors into a room and we trained 70 new councillors or newish councillors within a period of 10 days. So that when they hit their first meeting, they had some understanding and appreciation of what a parish, council, town or community meeting might look like and what their role in that meeting would be. And we found that was really warmly received, and we did that as a free members benefit, because frankly, the more well educated and well trained our councillors and councils are, the easier our life is going forward.
Fantastic. And it sounds like they're very well supported in Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes. And I think I completely agree that if you can offer that training and support, people will have the education to then go back and serve the communities that they have promised to do so. So that seems really fantastic. And can I ask, is there good turnout? Is there good turnout at your training? Is there anything you can recommend to increase more councillors to join when you are putting these things on?
Well, we offer training online. We also offer training in person. There are some courses that we only do in person. So we prefer to do our chairing skills in person because we think it's important to have the group of people in the room, and they learn in context. We don't learn quite as well in context when we're online. People don't speak and engage quite so freely. We do training during the day, we do training during the evening. I had resisted previously doing training on a Saturday because certainly 5 years ago, people didn't respond to a training invitation for Saturday, but this year they actually did. So I wonder if we are seeing a more diverse population coming through who are more willing to give up a Saturday morning now, an hour and a half to come into the office. We bribe them obviously with refreshments. But having them in the room and giving them that safe space with others who are in a similar position, perhaps with no background in local government, but they're learning a cohort, they're building a cohort around them to help them with that engagement. So I think keep the training flexible, go across any platform you can, at any time of the day you're willing to. And just give them up. We also share our high value courses with our neighbouring ALCs. I see we've got Rachel with us from Oxfordshire, and we frequently share courses with our neighbouring Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire, Central Beds and Hertfordshire. So if we've got to get inexpensive speakers to come into our courses, we offer it to our neighbouring ALCs as well, which is quite interesting.
That's great, thank you. And yeah, flexibility seems to be the key there with a changing cohort, which seems positive as well from your side. Great. Well, LGA research has suggested that the people who are already involved in their community in some way and have those transferable skills that they can bring to the role of a councillor is often a good place to start. And I just wanted to ask you what you think some of those key skills are that people can bring from their other roles, and what key things people can also learn from being a councillor as well.
I think bringing communication and listening skills. Parents are very good at knowing that you never ask closed questions. And as a councillor, we need to practice asking open questions. So we don't get simple yes or no's, we get people's reflections and listening and hearing what people are saying. I think problem solving and decision making, we actually make a surprising number of decisions and problem solving decisions in our daily lives. Bringing those to council is very useful. Teamwork and collaboration. We come to council as very disparate people. We may not have common backgrounds in any way, shape or form, or common skill sets, and we need to learn to build a team. And sometimes we say, do something nice. As a council, do something nice. Don't just talk about the dog poo and the bus shelters and the hedges, but actually get together and talk about why you wanted to become a councillor, and perhaps capture those into an ambition statement and start to build what you want to do from there. Leadership and advocacy. Many people out there who come to council have either worked in a leadership role or in supporting others who need support. Perhaps it's as simple as can't access the rates department of their local principal authority, but helping and supporting people is key. And I think coming out of council, you learn to think more strategically, because you have to think beyond just your own interests, but into how what you're achieving as a council benefits everybody. You certainly build up a level of resilience, and you do learn to be diplomatic, and you might even need to invest in a Kevlar vest from time to time. It can be a robust environment, but it should be robust without being an attack formation. So we learn how to handle that. And there's no doubt about it that you will gradually build up your confidence. You'll do your public speaking. You will also learn to write and communicate more effectively through writing, I think, as a councillor.
Amazing. Thank you so much. There's so many skills there, and I'm sure people are kind of frantically writing those down, but so many skills people I don't think realize that they can transfer from their other roles into the world of being a councillor. So that is incredibly helpful. And the final question from me, Mel, is just any advice that you have for people considering putting themselves forward for election next year?
I think go along to a council meeting, go along and see your own council, go along and look at a neighbouring council as well. Perhaps even meetings across different tiers. If you don't want to go to the principal authority, maybe hop online. I wouldn't recommend staying for the whole thing. They're often very long, but hop online and see how a meeting ebbs and flows. I think have a conversation with an existing councillor, pop in and see your friendly clerk, and give it a try. Really give it a try. I think it is the most rewarding thing that you can do for your community. You will learn so much more about your community, even if you think you're pretty well bedded in there. After 28 years of living in a community and then becoming a councillor, you find out things you never knew. It's fascinating.
Thank you, Mel, and completely echo the call out to go and meet your local councillors and to go to a council meeting. There's nothing quite like it. So definitely, if you haven't done so before, would highly recommend doing that. Thank you so much, Mel, for your really insightful answers. And again, if there are any questions people have, pop them in the Q&A and we will come back to those after all the speakers have had a chance to speak. Wonderful. So I'm going to move on to Andrew now. And I think starting off, Andrew, it'd be great to hear about when your parish council started to promote the May 2025 parish council elections.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we actually started discussing it sort of early autumn in last year, and the reason for starting sort of thinking about it early was we wanted to make sure we hit the ground running, really wanted to build some momentum and engagement with the community ahead of the elections. And it was my first election, so I was very grateful that actually my assistant clerk, who'd had experience from the previous election, really wanted to sort of take that as a project on board, which she did, and she absolutely led it, and by creating lots of materials, etc. And I have to say, at this point, our sort of Cornwall association, again, we're very proactive from the previous elections and at this one about sending out information to support and templates, etc., to support the council. So using all that, she was able to really make the promotional activity that we wanted to do. And for me, I call it sort of like a teaser campaign. So we actually launched the promotion of it in our winter newsletter, which went out in sort of late November last year. And the idea was really it goes out to every household in the parish, just over 6,000. And we really wanted to connect with a sort of broad and inclusive cross-section of the community. And we sort of she created a 3-page article on, what's it like to be a councillor, really trying to demystify the role of the councillor and the council, and also just sort of making the message clear or sending the message that people could really have a positive impact and make a difference by considering being a councillor. And giving up their time, and sort of really what all that meant and what it looked like.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like a really robust campaign to have started back in winter, and have all that kind of build up time must have been really helpful as well to kind of plan out exactly when you wanted to have articles or kind of put certain things on in the area to alert people. So it kind of was a flowing campaign. Is that how it felt?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what the assistant clerk did was put a sort of a clear timeline together of what messages we wanted to put out. Obviously, we were waiting for our unitary authority to sort of confirm timelines, etc. So once the timelines were out for the elections, we made sure those were posted. And what she did was create various posters, messages for social media, but each one was very different. So we didn't want to just keep it very much the same. Each one had sort of very bold messages like, we want you, or make a difference. And then we were able to really provide links, sort of to try and keep it all in one place for people who are interested. Providing links to the Cornwall Council website, for example, or to our own website, where part of the project, the assistant clerk had created a document to support the whole process. And again, just going back to the whole demystifying the role of the council. So that timeline was key, and certainly the materials that were put together as part of that campaign. Again, it was very strategic in then how we landed that and promoted it.
Sounds excellent. Thank you so much. And following from that, you mentioned social media there, but was there things like Facebook or other social media avenues that were effective in encouraging residents to stand in 2025?
So we utilise Facebook a lot, as well as the website, etc., and the parish notice boards, the usual advertising space, and we were gaining a lot of momentum actually on Facebook. And again, because of the frequency of the posts that we were doing, again, keeping it fresh, we were seeing that actually different people were picking up and looking at those. We were trying to build our following on Facebook anyway. I think on reflection, and I know this is perhaps jumping the gun for later on, but to really engage with perhaps a younger demographic, we could have used things like Instagram, etc., which we're looking at doing at the moment and putting that in place. But certainly Facebook was really beneficial, and the boost functionality on Facebook really helped us reach thousands more people than our followership. So I'd certainly advocate social media being a key tool for anybody to use ahead of the elections.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting. And I think interesting reflection there on the use of Instagram, or perhaps the generational differences as well, in kind of what you're seeing. And I'm guessing when you're using Facebook, you can see kind of the types of audience that you're attracting as well through the people that are coming to you, then kind of interested in finding out more in the role as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. And what advice would you have, or other reflections would you have for local councils holding elections looking forward to May 2026?
I think, as we just mentioned, really utilise the social media. I was very lucky that the assistant clerk took the lead on it. So have that timeline, have a strategy in place for what information do you want to disseminate, when do you want to do it, and just really keep refreshing it. The council were very supportive of the work that we were doing to publish the elections, and I think the engagement side of it is key, not just for elections, but really just to, again, put the parish council or the town council, the work you do on the map, put it in people's minds. So actually it makes it more familiar, I guess, and not so alien to them when they're looking at it. So that would really be my key advice. But yeah, really utilize the social media aspect of it.
That's wonderful. And I completely echo the call out to use social media, or kind of engage with your residents year round. It's not just election time that we need to be promoting local government. It's all year round, so that people do build up that understanding of what they can access and what their local parish town council are doing for them as well. So that's really great. A slight shift in questions. I'd be interested to know, and maybe for delegates who aren't as familiar, what your council's day-to-day looks like, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah, no, of course. So we're a fairly large parish council down here in Cornwall, and so whilst we don't provide a huge amount of services per se, actually we've got a very active council, which we're very lucky to have, and so it's the council really are quite active in making sure they are a voice for the local community. So whether that's just supporting with projects such as putting defibrillator units in, for example, we do own a couple of areas of land. We've just installed a new play park in one. So it's about providing for the local community, and just championing what the community are hoping to what they want in place, and being a voice for them, really. But yeah, we look after the land. We manage several areas of land as well. It's quite the parish is made up of some urban areas, but also quite a lot of rural areas over quite a large geographical area. So it's important just to try and use the team that we have, to benefit all aspects of residents in the parish.
That's great. Thank you so much. And as a kind of final question and a reflection from you really is there anything you're very proud of in your time as clerk that you'd like to share?
Yes, I mean, I'm new to local government. I've only been in post for about 3.5 years now. I came from a different sector. And so I think just, being able to make a difference is something I take great pride in. I got my Silca earlier on this year. And I think, alluding to what I said, it's being able to promote and champion the work of the council and actually seeing things come to fruition. And, the old adage of getting things done. The new play park I mentioned has been in place now for just over a year, but the use that's had and the joy that's brought to residents, it was previously there was nothing certainly within the immediate vicinity. So that really has given something to the community that was needed. So that I take a lot of pride in, and I never underestimate the impact that not just myself and my team have by dealing with day-to-day queries and supporting residents, but also that what the council can achieve through their decision making and the projects they want to to see. And it goes back to my point about engaging with the community ahead of the elections and just making people really aware that they can have a really positive impact on their local community.
Fantastic message to end on. So thank you, Andrew. And I think many of us will know that feeling of making a difference and that being one of the key reasons that we're in local government. And I think that's another great reason to share with people who are thinking of standing for election of the difference they can make to communities too. So again, I hope people have some food for thought there and are popping some questions into the Q&A. But thank you for now, Andrew. That was fab. And we've got a double act, as it were, from Councillor Phil North and Emma Silverton from Test Valley. So thank you both for joining today. And Councillor North, I'll start with a question to you, if that's okay. And that question is, what prompted you to stand for election as a Test Valley Borough Councillor?
Well, a bit like the gentleman just said there from Bray, to get things done and to support and stand up for people, support and stand up for people of Andover, my hometown. I was first elected to the district council in 2007, so some 18 years ago now. But it was initially frustrated. Frustrated because I fought a very close election and spoke to many people on the doorstep and suggested to them that I would raise the issues that they were talking to me about once I got elected. But actually then quite quickly finding out that a lot of the resources, and this is probably where there's a difference between a district level or traditional district level or a county level and a town council or parish council level, was that the resources were directed at the cabinet or the executive. And non-exec members didn't really get a chance to carry out projects in their wards, essentially. But we did a lot of work subsequent to that. I think I started off in 2011 with the LGA in terms of creating what's become known as our community councillor model here in Test Valley, and recognising that every single councillor, whether they are standing for a political party or none, are community leaders in their area. They have been elected, they've got a democratic mandate. And if they are part of the administration or they're not part of the administration, should be able to get things done in their areas. So as a result of that work, we have dedicated a lot of resource to individual councillors as well as the administration. And that's come in two forms. Firstly, financial resource in terms of community councillor grant funds and community asset funds and various other monies for projects. But it's also come in dedicated officer resource because actually it requires officers to help councillors get projects done and then work within those departments of the council. So one of my initial successes, I suppose, after we sort of implemented that model was, well, there's two. There was one, got a skate park installed in one of the most deprived wards of the borough, and that was through a lot of conversations that we had with local communities, getting under the skin of actually what their real needs were. But also then the development of a new community centre. And that was a new community centre in a new development in Andover. And that community centre was a requirement of the Section 106 contract between the council and the developers. But by that time, we created a community association, and the community association were clear that they wanted to have a new nursery as part of that community hall for an income stream for them, but also as a great facility for local people. Now, they couldn't have done that if we hadn't then tried to make changes with the developer to make it Ofsted compliant. So actually, we did a lot of work there, and we made that a success. But we wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for that sort of community councillor model in the district council that I'm now the leader of. But I suppose if I reflect back to town and parishes primarily, that there isn't really, aside from the chairman, it might be slightly different in some towns, but there isn't a sort of a cabinet non-exec model. It's all councillors contributing and having obviously the same weight of conversations and input. And I think as long as the resources are there, both financial but also officers helping councillors, but also having the conversations to get under the skin of the real needs of the local area, not just those that shout the loudest, then I think that's what's needed, and that will help encourage people to stand for election in the future, to understand and know that they can make a real difference.
Thank you so much. So much detail in that answer as well, and it's really incredible to see how much difference you've made in your community too. And it seems like that community councillor model has really helped the area to flourish and thrive too. And mentioned there kind of the officer and member relationships too. And it seems like that's been a really positive experience in Test Valley, which is great to hear as well. So thank you for sharing all of that. And you have touched on this already, but do you feel that you've had a chance to improve the lives of your residents by being the leader, but also just by implementing that community councillor model and allowing other councillors to really make that difference as well?
Yeah, I mean, Emma can talk about the officer member relationships in a minute. From my point of view, I think it's really good in Test Valley, and there's that mutual respect and understanding there. But in terms of chance to improve the lives of Test Valley residents, I do feel that. And I felt that before I became the leader of the council because of that work that we've done with the LGA to create that community council model. But obviously even more so now, I'm trying to live that model and take it further. So it's not just me as leader and has the opportunity to do that, but all members. I was clear when I became leader 8 years ago that my number one priority was to regenerate the town centres, particularly in Andover, but in Romsey, in the southern part of our borough too. And we're on the verge of doing some significant work in relation to those master plans before reorganisation takes place. But just to talk about some of the ways that we've managed to achieve that. I think the Melinda, when she spoke, she mentioned the word empowerment, and I think actually trying to empower all councillors, as I mentioned before, is really key. But we've done that in terms of championing closer working between our cabinet and our scrutiny committees, getting the scrutiny committee to get into sort of policy development as well, rather than just scrutineering. And I think that that's been helpful. Doing our corporate plan in terms of engaging with residents in a slightly different way. So it's not just the traditional survey work. It's actually a deliberative engagement process as well. Citizens' assemblies, getting people in a room, presenting them with evidence, getting them to rank priorities, hearing from other people. So they're not just putting forward their view of the world all of the time. And that gives you a chance to get under the skin of your communities a little bit more. But also then greater cross-party working as well. So we set up what we call a member community and development group in Test Valley, which is cross-party, and that lives the community councillor model, but also helps members with their development needs. And then essentially doing things in a place-based way as well. So we set up Andover Vision and Romsey Future, and the community council work that we do in our rural areas are done in that place-based way as well. So that's been really important in terms of developing partnerships through our district. So it's not just the council going along and councillors going along to the Andover Vision, it is all partners. So some of the big successes we've had is because we've had NHS colleagues, for example, that played their part in the Andover Vision, which was invaluable during COVID, but also helped us create the new Andover Health Hub that's recently been set up. But also, as I mentioned in terms of my previous answer, funds as well that local communities can bid into with the support of the councillor. And we've been able to do that because we are a district council, and okay, we're don't have the same cost pressures as potentially the upper tier authorities, but we've done that also because we made it a priority, and we've used some of our new homes bonus not just to sort of prop up our revenue budget, but actually say this is capital money here as a community asset fund for communities to bid into. And I think when we're looking forward now to the future of local government in terms of local government reorganisation and greater community resilience and communities potentially doing more for themselves, they can only do that with the support of the local council. So investing in that community infrastructure. And if that community infrastructure is invested in, for example, then actually you could potentially deal with adult social care in a slightly different way because you've got that wraparound support of the community and people being more independent and looked after in their own areas. So that is a very long-winded answer to that question, but I think actually as we look to the future, there is some sort of real positivity in the way that we've been certainly working in Test Valley and trying to replicate that in other areas.
Definitely, and thank you so much for sharing that. I think a lot around partnership is never underestimate the importance of partnerships in and outside local government. So thank you for highlighting that. But also that community engagement and real place-based focus, I think can't be underestimated, not just in Test Valley, but I imagine in lots of places around the country. And I hope that's given people some real inspiration of possibly how they can continue to emphasize the role of their council, but also kind of start thinking maybe a bit wider than they have been previously about how to best engage their citizens to promote change. So thank you very much, Councillor North,
No problem.
for
Thank
those
you.
really helpful reflections. Emma, last but very much not least, a couple of questions for you. So to start off with, what is the most fulfilling aspect of your role as Democratic Services Manager at Test Valley?
So obviously, as Democratic Services Manager, I love delving into the Constitution, as we all do, looking at the procedure rules. But I would say, and I do say to the team regularly, we're in a really privileged position in democratic services in that we're sort of the linchpin of everything that happens in the council. We are able to see everything that's happening in all the different services and out in our communities, and bring that together through the decision-making process, ensuring that's open, transparent, accessible to the public, and that decisions that are made for people really are in the best interest of the community. I think what's really great to have been able to see over the last few years, following on from the development of our corporate plan, as Councillor North mentioned, which was really put together based on what people out in the communities felt, was seeing the decisions come through the democratic process that, based on community need, are really being delivered. So the council set aside £10 million of funding recently, which is specifically put aside for community projects that have been developed with our councillors and partners out in the community. So it's not just a lip service, we want to know what you think in a survey, like Phil said. We're really putting that in action now as a council, which is really great to see.
That's really positive, and I think hopefully other councils are kind of acting in the same way. And it is definitely not about lip services. I completely agree with you. You need to be able to represent what people actually want in the community and kind of work with them in collaboration. So that's really helpful. Thank you. And do you, in your opinion, kind of, we touched on kind of the member officer relationship as well. Do you think that Test Valley Borough councillors and officers consider that they make a positive difference to their residents' lives?
Yeah, I really think they do. And I think we've got really good, as Councillor North mentioned, officer and member relationships. And I think our relationships internally are great, but it also goes beyond that. I think councillors have got brilliant networks out in their communities, as they have with partners, and officers work really well with partners, and all those great different relationships are brought together for the benefit of communities. So we've got a really strong Test Valley Association of Parish and Town Councils, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that's our local parish network, which we as a borough council are really keen to support. So I work with the chair of that association, and we have an annual conference as well as regular meetings where we bring together the borough council and representatives. We usually have around sort of 50, 60 that come together each year, and it's really an opportunity to talk about what's going on in those parishes at sort of the grassroots level, and how we can work with our councillors to make those opportunities come forward. So I think it's definitely makes a difference to people. We've made a real effort, I think, to make the role of a councillor really valuable, as Phil was saying, around our community councillor model. So it's not just about that traditional decision-making role, and that might put off people wanting to stand for the borough council or even parish councils. I think sometimes we had a session with our parish councils recently, and they were saying a lot of people don't want to stand necessarily in the local area because they don't just want to sit in a village hall in the dark on like a February cold evening and make decisions about what's going to be spent where. They want to be able to make a real difference, and I think the things we've got in place allow them to work with their borough council representatives and partners to actually make an impact, and really able to demonstrate that impact as well, which I think is great.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And yeah, completely feels like it makes it almost more accessible, doesn't it? If people feel like they are making that difference, it's not just the decision making, like you say. So that it seems like a really positive way forward. And it seems like it's making a lot of difference in the Test Valley area as well. So thank you, Emma. That is fantastic. Thank you to all the speakers. They were really, really useful reflections. I know that my brain is buzzing with kind of more questions and kind of more things I could ask, but I will now turn to the Q&A part of the session, and I can see in the Q&A people have already put some questions in, which is fantastic. So I will just have a quick scroll through and see what we can ask our panel members today. So there's one question here from John. It's how can we motivate councillors to take up training opportunities? And I wonder, Mel, if I can direct that one to you, but if anyone else does want to come in, please do say. But Mel, over to you for that.
I wish I had a silver bullet. It is a challenge. I think that sometimes for key little bits of training, you need to break it up into smaller parts and actually do half-an-hour sessions before your main council meeting starts, so that we're giving them absolutely no excuse not to get in to that particular event and attend some training. I know that I've used that particularly when we're talking about code of conduct issues, because you can never get the people who need the training into the room, but you could also do those half-hour slots before a finance council meeting, or something on HR just before an HR meeting. If there is anything that you can do that to make it easier. I've mentioned before different ways of getting them into a meeting, either online or in person. Perhaps weaving it into some form of council visioning day. So we have an away day for councillors and have some practical exercises for them to do and some training away. So frankly, it becomes a position of them not wanting to be left out, rather than them needing to make the decision to engage in the training.
Thank you. That's really helpful advice. And Emma, did you want to jump in there as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say some of the stuff that we've done to try and encourage borough councillors, but also some training for parish councillors, apart from fiddling with different times and different formats, online, in person as well, is to try and make those sessions really engaging. So instead of just doing a PowerPoint and talking to people, it's how can we make that really interactive, bring their voice into the room. One of my greatest achievements so far in my career is I created like a democracy board game that reflects locally, that we use with staff and councillors as well. So it's just trying to pique their interest. And also I think, you can sort of get away with sometimes. If you can find a subject area you know that people are really interested in and build that as the headline, a bit like Melinda was saying, to get them there, then you can do some other stuff around that once they're in the room. I think biscuits always help as well.
Providing bacon rolls, that's our fourth.
All very, very valid ideas. And I definitely want to find out more about that board game, Emma. That sounds like an intriguing way to engage people. So maybe we can follow that up at a different event. A question next for you, Councillor North, is what advice would you give to councillors who sometimes feel overwhelmed in their role, but also feel like they could do more as well?
Well, I think it's just about recognising that there are support networks there. So it's not just you as one councillor that has the responsibility to do everything. And that's what I was mentioning before in terms of, I think, the strength of our community councillor model is actually elected members and officers working closely together, because if you're doing things out of sync with each other, it's not going to work. But also just sort of recognizing that there is that support there, either fellow members, the chair of the council, or working with the clerk, or if we're talking about a district level, with officers, and just talking things through. But also, I would say that if you're really keen to do a project, then try and get everything lined up beforehand, rather than just sort of going head on into it. And then there are some problems that it's more difficult to resolve. But if you've got a well worked up plan, that's just not you individually that's come up with it, that you've spoken to others about, then it's more likely to succeed.
Thank you. I hope that's helpful for attendees on the call. Andrew, a question for you, I think, is someone asking that they have an aging population in the area who maybe don't use social media, and kind of the opposite almost of the advice you gave earlier in terms of using social media. How would you advise that they engage with that population?
That's a tough one, I'm going to be honest. I think it's something that sort of resonates with us, particularly because we do, our demographic is predominantly sort of over sort of 60 years. However, what we've tried to do is we're very conscious that and we're reviewing it currently, but the physical newsletter has been great, because you can disseminate to every household. Obviously, there are other challenges that everyone's facing now with costs and climate, etc. I think, to answer the question though, we have just tried to make what communication we have as accessible as possible. So utilising things like the local leisure centre, local post offices. We've tried to use the local doctor's surgeries, although that hasn't been very successful. But use local village hubs, as it were, to put information into, so that people can access it, that don't have the ability to go online, etc. And also, we've kept very much. We ask people, when we're doing surveys or in the consultations, is feel free to call us in the office, and we can take your answers manually, and then we can feed that back. So we just try and be as accessible as we possibly can to everybody. But really, I'd say to any council, just utilise what else is in your area to have those leaflets, newsletters, information, whatever it might be, or even sort of meet your councillor sessions. So just making it more accessible.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to come in on that question as well, Emma?
What we have, and I'm sure other people's principal authorities will have access to, that might be helpful as well, is a lot of data and information about the demographics of your community. And we use something, I don't know if people have heard about it, it's called Acorn data, that gives a broad profile of the community. And part of that data can provide, like, people in the communities, again, this is at high level, preferences for how to be engaged. So contacting your sort of principal authority and seeing if they've got that data available might be really helpful. And it might be surprising, actually, in understanding what the best ways to communicate are. Also, I think from some of the community's resilience work we do, and building on the gentleman that just spoke, it's around making the best use of your local assets you've got already. So rather than coming up with new ways to engage, understanding what are the different groups and forums and networks that already exist in your community, and asking them to disseminate information with you, because they're sort of locally trusted groups that people are already using. So rather than building another one and people are busy, it's making the best use of those that are in place already.
Thank you, Emma. I'm just having another scroll through the questions, and can I quickly ask that people try and keep them as concise as possible? There's a few paragraphs in here that is quite difficult to read through, so please bear that in mind when you're asking a question. I think another question that would be useful to hear from the panel is how do we encourage sitting councillors to engage with residents outside of public meetings? What else can we do there? And does anyone want to kick us off with that question?
Shall I come in here? I think it depends on the subject matter, doesn't it? Really, in terms of the council, if there's issues that have come up that those local people have put forward, I suspect that councillors will want to try and engage outside of meeting. But also, I think it goes back to that word empowerment again, doesn't it? And in terms of, do councillors have the confidence to do that, and do they think that they should be doing that? I think that they should, but also it's just got to be done in a managed way. So you don't necessarily want, even at a town parish council level, councillors going off having conversations with people and suggesting something that's going to happen, which has not necessarily been agreed back at the ranch in terms of the parish council. But if they are gathering evidence and information and feeding it into that process, then that obviously should be encouraged. But I think it depends in terms of the culture of the individual council in terms of whether they encourage that or not. But it would be great if it was the chairman, the clerk, which were setting parameters for doing that. But then obviously empowering those individuals to go out and do it.
Great, thank you, Councillor North. Really good answer there. Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
I think I would probably agree with Bill in that it's, do those councillors that aren't engaging, are they not engaging because they don't feel they've got a role that they can do anything with? So, you know, have they got an approach as a council about how people can really engage and make a difference, rather than, is it just talking to people? What's the point? Because we're never going to make a difference. But actually, if you've got avenues or particular projects, and if you can demonstrate, people can go out and talk to people and demonstrate need, they can really feed that back into the process and hopefully make a difference. And then it sort of snowballs over time, and hopefully that gets people more involved.
Thank you, Emma. Mel, over to you.
I think that there is an element of our councillors feeling that they cannot go out and meet people independently. There are code of conduct issues there. So I think actually remembering when we go through our annual meeting, actually voting to put a councillor as the point of contact for particular groups or particular events is giving them a mandate to go out there, and you can then encourage them that way. They know that they have that mandate, not to go out and make promises, but to go out and to hear and to listen and to give the council response back if it's appropriate. But I think we need to be clear about giving them the mandate so that they can go out there and be brave and stop hiding behind their clerks.
Thank you very much, Mel. I think we've got time for one or two more, so please do keep popping questions in and I'll try my best to get to them. So the next one I can see here is, are parish councils allowed to promote the candidates? For example, doing a bio of each candidate and sharing it online or in newsletters, as it's very difficult to find out more about people standing, particularly kind of new candidates, and therefore those people maybe aren't as visual, aren't as known, and maybe don't get as many votes. So are parish councils allowed to promote candidates, and do parish councils promote them in that way?
And so I would probably be quite nervous of promoting, if you're a clerk, promoting individuals. I think you can certainly do profiles, and things we did in the lead up to some of our Be a Councillor work was profiles of different councillors, which had sort of standard questions around, you know, why you became a councillor, what you've managed to achieve, those sorts of questions. And that was a whole sort of raft of profiles that was available across all our different councillors. So I certainly think you could promote the role of councillor, and you could use existing councillors' profiles to highlight that as a real story. But I'd definitely probably be nervous about promoting particular candidates and not others. I'm not sure that would necessarily be the best way forward.
Thanks, Emma, and hope that helps. Oh, sorry, Andrew, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, no, sorry. I thought it was just following on from what was just said. I think, yeah, we're not able to promote any one candidate. Obviously, we can't do that. But I think as a collective, it's good to introduce your council to people who may want to stand as prospective candidates. And I think one of the things our council did was, as I said earlier, getting on board with the promotion. But actually, we ran some Meet Your Councillor events sort of earlier on in sort of January, February time this year. And then those councillors that wanted to attend, and we did them at different times of day, could then engage with those that attended. We were able to provide them the information, but we weren't actively promoting sort of our own internal candidates, as it were. It was more, again, just to promote the council and the role of to any prospective candidates. So yeah, I'd want to absolutely avoid any sort of favoritism or bias towards any particular councillor.
Great, thank you both, and yeah, I hope that helps for the person that asked that question. I think this might be our final one, but helpfully this person's included some stats in, so hopefully a good one to end on. So in 2025, it says here 21% of parish council parish seats up for election were left unfilled, and over 60% uncontested. How do we reverse that level of apathy? I think that's a very big question, but kind of we've all talked about what we can do to encourage residents to become councillors or encourage more people to get involved in local democracy. And I wonder if that question is almost a starting point for thinking about any final reflections before we start to wrap this up, about what more people could do to encourage more people to stand for elections. So does anyone want to kick us off on that?
Yeah, should I have a go to start with? Because I think this is obviously it is more prevalent, isn't it, at town and parish council level than it is at other levels where the vast majority of seats are contested. But I think it's just demonstrate the power of the parish council really in terms of what it can achieve. Doing events like this is what we're doing today, but also those local examples, as many of the panelists have spoken about, in terms of successes, getting things done. And if you're a successful parish council and are getting things done, then actually potentially people in the area might want a piece of that action and help contribute to their communities as well. I think the difficulty is, though, that people live busy lives, and part of that is then why you get the sort of potential age range or sex of councillors that you do have, and you mentioned that earlier, Poonam. But I do think that actually just demonstrating what positive aspects the parish and town councils can bring can help people, but also talking about the sort of support network that there is in place. You won't be coming and be putting a position where you have to do everything on your own. There is a team of councillors there. There is the parish clerk. There's potentially other officers there to help and support you. And actually, it's potentially not the huge amount of work that some people think it might be.
Would anyone else like to follow that on?
I was just going to say, building on what excuse me, Phil was saying about demonstrating the impact, what we've really tried to concentrate on with our councillors and with our parish councillors when demonstrating the impact is really telling the story of what's happened and making that relatable to people. So we have gone through periods where a lot of our stories were promoted around, oh, you know, we've given £500 to this group, and then it's, you know, some councillors holding up one of the big comedy checks. But actually, we're really trying to delve into that to show the impact now. Actually, we gave £500 to that group, which meant they could do this, which resulted in that. So it's really sort of building on it and showing the story to try and show how you can make a difference. And I think it's the end now. So not to get into LGR, but maybe promote, I think the role of parish and town councillors is going to be ever more important, isn't it? With that over us in Hampshire, we've got LGR happening in the future, and the government talks about models of neighbourhood governance, and I think it's really important that people are made aware of that, however we do that, and engage in the role of parish and town councils, because they're going to play a really key role in that. We don't just want to perhaps roll out some of those traditional models of neighbourhood governance that are, you know, area committees that have come up with by officers, you know, in smoke-filled rooms. The way to deliver services to really understand local needs, and key to understanding local need is having engaged, active parish councillors. So just trying to, I suppose, demonstrate and promote that role and the importance it has now more than ever is really important.
Thank you, Emma. I can see some nods on the panel as well, but I think that's such a powerful message to leave people with. And I think you're right, it's so important to just demonstrate how important parish and town councillors can be, what the council can do, as you said, Councillor North, and how people can really get involved and make that difference locally. And I think that is often unsung in this part of local government. So anything we can do to kind of keep shining that light is really, really helpful. So thank you everyone for submitting questions to the Q&A. Sorry we didn't get to all of them, but there were some really fascinating ones in there. So appreciate people popping those in. I'm going to attempt to try and wrap things up. I know it's kind of getting towards lunchtime now as well, but I hope you'll agree it's been a really interesting and helpful session this afternoon. So just to kind of wrap things up by saying that there are obviously local elections coming up in 2026. 7th of May 2026 is the date that I have in front of me. And kind of at least 72 unitary metropolitan district and also London councils in England. So many elections taking place. And as we look ahead to that, kind of thinking about everything on this call, but also outside of that in terms of what you can be doing to prepare for those. You can find out when your next principal authority elections are on the gov.uk website, and where your next parish and town council elections are on the principal authority website as well. And if you have any questions from residents about standing for a political party, they will also need to go through that local party selection process. So please tell them to get in touch with the party concerned if you do get those queries, and they can find out the timetable relevant for that. So I think all that's left for me to do is say a huge thank you to our fantastic speakers. So Mel, Andrew, Phil and Emma, and really thank you for your time today and your really insightful contributions as well.